Now let's begin with something most people never think about when they sprinkle cinnamon into their coffee or oatmeal. We assume that because something is natural, because it comes from bark and not a laboratory, it must be harmless. But that's a very naive assumption. Nature is not benign, nature is powerful, and power, without restraint, becomes dangerous. The most commonly consumed form of cinnamon in supermarkets is derived from Cinnamomum cassia, often called cassia cinnamon. It contains a compound known as coumarin. In small amounts, coumarin isn't necessarily a problem. Your body can process it. But here's where it becomes serious. When consumed in large quantities, especially daily through supplements or heavy dietary use, coumarin can place significant stress on the liver. And the liver is not a trivial organ. It is your biochemical command center. It filters toxins, regulates metabolism, supports digestion, and manages energy. When you overload it repeatedly, even with something as seemingly innocent as cinnamon, you're introducing strain into a system that thrives on balance. This is where the psychological dimension matters. We live in a culture obsessed with optimization. If a teaspoon is good, then a tablespoon must be better. If cinnamon stabilizes blood sugar, then more cinnamon must amplify the effect. That line of thinking is understandable, but it's reckless. It reflects impatience. It reflects our desire to shortcut the slow discipline of sustainable health. And biology does not reward impatience. Excessive coumarin intake has been linked to liver toxicity in susceptible individuals. Not everyone will experience dramatic symptoms immediately. That's what makes it dangerous. Damage often accumulates quietly, subtly, gradually, until one day your body begins to signal that something is wrong. So the issue isn't that cinnamon is evil. It isn't. In moderate amounts, it can be beneficial. The issue is excess. The issue is unconscious consumption. The issue is the assumption that natural equals unlimited. Health is not built on extremes. It's built on informed restraint, on understanding the limits of your own biology and respecting them. Because when you ignore limits in pursuit of more, you don't become healthier, you become careless. And carelessness, over time, always extracts a price. Now consider something even more subtle, and in many ways, more dangerous. Cinnamon has natural blood-thinning properties. On the surface, that sounds beneficial. We hear, improves circulation, or, supports heart health, and we immediately categorize it as positive. But physiology is not a collection of isolated benefits. It is an interconnected system. And when you alter one variable, you inevitably influence others. Certain compounds in cinnamon, again, particularly in Cinnamomum cassia, can enhance anticoagulant effects. That means your blood may clot more slowly. Now, if you are perfectly healthy and consuming small culinary amounts, this likely isn't a crisis. But if you are already taking blood-thinning medication or aspirin regularly, or you have a clotting disorder, the equation changes dramatically. Because now you are stacking effects. And stacking effects in biology is rarely trivial. It can mean easier bruising. It can mean prolonged bleeding from minor cuts. In more serious cases, it can increase internal bleeding risks. The frightening part is that many people don't think to mention cinnamon supplements to their doctors. It's just a spice, after all. But when concentrated and consumed daily, it stops behaving like a garnish and starts behaving like a pharmacological agent. This is where responsibility enters the conversation. One of the fundamental markers of maturity is the ability to think in systems rather than in fragments. To understand that adding something good into your life doesn't occur in a vacuum. It interacts with everything else you're doing, every pill you take, every condition you carry, every vulnerability you may not even be aware of. There's also a psychological lesson here. We often chase control. We want to micromanage our biology with hacks, shortcuts, enhancements. But true health is not built on frantic accumulation. It's built on informed decisions, on communication with medical professionals, on restraint rather than impulsive optimization. You must ask yourself, are you acting out of knowledge, or out of assumption? Out of discipline, or out of trend? Because when you combine substances without understanding their cumulative impact, you're not being proactive, you're being careless. And your body, unlike your social media feed, does not reward carelessness. Respect the complexity of your system. Think before you stack, and never mistake natural for risk-free. And then we arrive at something that appears paradoxical. Cinnamon is widely celebrated for its ability to help regulate blood sugar. It's praised in nutritional circles, recommended in wellness blogs, added generously to smoothies and coffee in the name of metabolic control. And again, in reasonable amounts, that can be helpful. But here's the complication. When you push that mechanism too far, you can destabilize the very balance you're trying to create. Cinnamon can enhance insulin sensitivity and lower blood glucose levels. Now imagine someone already mindful of carbohydrates, perhaps even restricting them, maybe even taking medication for diabetes. Add large amounts of cinnamon supplements on top of that, and you may tip the scale too far. Blood sugar can drop lower than intended. And hypoglycemia is not a minor inconvenience. It can manifest as dizziness, shakiness, brain fog, fatigue, irritability. Your body essentially sounding an alarm. What's fascinating is how often we interpret those signals incorrectly. We feel off, anxious, unfocused, and we blame stress. We blame sleep. We blame the world. Rarely do we suspect the healthy addition we enthusiastically adopted 2 weeks ago. And it doesn't stop there. Excessive cinnamon consumption can irritate the lining of the mouth and digestive tract. Some people experience a burning sensation, sores, or gastrointestinal discomfort. The body has protective barriers for a reason. When you overwhelm them repeatedly, they react. Now, step back and consider the broader pattern. In each of these cases, liver strain, blood thinning, blood sugar crashes, the underlying theme is excess. Not poison, not toxicity in small amounts. Excess. There's a deep psychological truth embedded in that word. We tend to assume that intensity equals effectiveness. That more effort, more supplementation, more intervention accelerates progress. But biological systems are not machines you can push indefinitely. They are dynamic, self-regulating networks designed for equilibrium. Health, at its core, is not about domination. It's about cooperation with your physiology. When you chase extreme solutions, you often create instability. When you pursue balance, you build resilience. So before you add another spoonful in the name of optimization, pause. Ask yourself whether you're acting from wisdom or impatience. Because sustainable health is not achieved through extremes, it is built through disciplined moderation. And moderation, though less dramatic, is where real strength lies.